Wind moves through abandoned ruins and forgotten deserts, carrying a silence so heavy it feels intentional, like the world itself is holding its breath. Across continents, half-buried temples stare at the sky with the same unsettling expression, as if they once witnessed something our modern minds can barely imagine. Etched into their stones are stories of fire, floods, and darkness, myths that echo across civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and time. And yet, they describe the same fate, a world undone, a world reborn. Mainstream history waves these away as legends, comforting metaphors carved by frightened ancestors trying to explain the chaos around them. But the texts themselves refuse to stay quiet. They speak with a precision that shouldn't exist. Timelines, celestial events, cosmic warnings. Why would cultures that never met insist on the same catastrophic vision? Perhaps the real mystery isn't whether these stories are true, but why they were told at all. Across the ancient world, a strange pattern emerges, one so consistent it becomes impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Babylonian clay tablets warn of fire descending from the heavens. The Maya speak of ages ending in darkness and floods. The Old Testament describes skies blackened and waters rising without mercy. And in the Sanskrit Puranas, entire cycles of creation collapse under celestial turmoil. Cultures divided by oceans somehow painted the same terrifying picture. This documentary isn't here to prove that a doomsday is inevitable, nor to claim that every prophecy hides a literal forecast. Instead, it asks a simpler but far more unsettling question. Why were the ancients so certain that destruction would come from above and below? And why does modern science, quietly, cautiously, identify similar threats today? When myth and science begin to whisper the same warnings, ignoring the pattern becomes its own kind of risk that we can no longer overlook. What if the warnings left behind by ancient civilizations were never meant as metaphors, but as fragments of memory? Echoes of a world that had already fallen before ours began? It's an unsettling possibility, one that challenges the comfortable belief that humanity's story is a steady march forward. Because if these accounts are memories, then history is not a line but a loop, and we may be standing at the edge of a cycle older than any empire. Many cultures insisted that destruction arrives not as punishment but as inevitability, as predictable as the turning of seasons. So the forbidden question remains: are we repeating a pattern we no longer remember? And if the past was truly wiped clean once before, what clues did the survivors leave behind for us? To answer that, we must step deeper into the oldest records humanity ever preserved. Only then can the truth finally emerge fully. In the cradle of civilization, long before Egypt raised its first pyramid, the Sumerians carved their warnings into clay. Their tablets speak of worlds destroyed and reborn through celestial rhythms, cycles measured not in generations but in cosmic seasons. In the Enuma Elish, the heavens erupt in violent reshaping, echoing patterns found in their flood narratives, where rising waters and shifting skies signal the end of an age. To the Sumerians, these weren't random disasters. They were scheduled events, woven into the fabric of the universe, tracked through precise astronomical observations. Mainstream scholars insist these stories belong to mythology, imaginative attempts to explain natural chaos. Yet the details are curiously specific: planetary alignments, star cycles, sudden floods tied to celestial movement. It raises the unsettling possibility that the Sumerians weren't simply inventing cosmic drama. They were recording inherited knowledge. Knowledge passed down from people who may have already lived through the destruction they described. In Egypt, the past lingers like a shadow etched into stone, hinting at a memory the culture never fully explained. The Ipuwer papyrus describes a world turned upside down, rivers flowing with blood, darkness swallowing the sky, structures collapsing as if the very earth rebelled. Pyramid inscriptions echo similar themes, references to stars falling, the heavens trembling, and a divine force reshaping the land. For centuries, scholars treated these accounts as poetic exaggerations, metaphors crafted to dramatize political or social unrest. But what if they weren't metaphors at all? What if these texts captured the sensory experience of a real cataclysm? Geological convulsions, volcanic ash blotting out sunlight, or electromagnetic disturbances shaking the world in ways ancient people could only describe as the sky falling. The Egyptians preserved their history meticulously. It's possible they weren't warning of imagined chaos, but recording a trauma their civilization never forgot. For the Maya, time was never a straight line. It was a living rhythm, an immense cosmic wheel turning through eras far larger than any kingdom or dynasty. Their famed long-count calendar, often misunderstood as a prediction of apocalypse, was never meant to mark an ending in the destructive sense. Instead, it marked a reset, the quiet closing of one cosmic chapter and the opening of another. When their calendar ends, it simply begins again, as if acknowledging that creation itself moves through cycles of birth, decline, and renewal. What makes this remarkable is how closely this mirrors patterns found in civilizations oceans away. The Maya weren't alone in tracking these vast cosmic intervals. Their timekeeping echoed a global awareness of celestial rhythms. The question isn't why the Maya believed in these cycles, but why so many ancient cultures agreed, as if they all remembered the same clock ticking behind the sky. Across hundreds of cultures, from the Arctic Circle to the Amazon, a single story rises from humanity's oldest memories: a world swallowed by water. More than 300 flood myths exist, each separated by oceans and centuries, yet somehow telling the same haunting tale. Rains that never ended, seas that rose without warning, and survivors who watched their world disappear beneath the waves. How did isolated civilizations with no known contact recall the same catastrophe with such striking similarity? Science offers clues that are almost as unsettling as the myths themselves. At the end of the last ice age, sea levels surged more than once with terrifying speed, swallowing coastlines and reshaping continents. Evidence of ancient megafloods, massive bursts from glacial lakes, and sudden oceanic rises suggests that early humans truly lived through events powerful enough to scar collective memory. Maybe these stories weren't metaphors or exaggerations. Maybe they were eyewitness accounts of a disaster so vast it imprinted itself on the human soul forever. Across ancient texts, a fiery visitor in the heavens appears again and again, sometimes called a comet, sometimes a dragon, sometimes a celestial weapon cast down by the gods. Civilizations separated by vast distances describe the sky blazing open, leaving devastation in its wake. These images may sound symbolic, yet they mirror a real scientific mystery: the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, something struck or exploded above the Earth with enough force to shatter global climates almost overnight. In its aftermath, temperatures plummeted, ecosystems collapsed, and entire species of megafauna vanished. Mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, all disappeared in a geological instant. For early humans, it must have felt like the sky itself had turned against them. Is it any wonder their descendants spoke of dragons breathing fire or divine weapons falling from above? Their stories might be poetic, but the fear behind them was painfully real, a memory carved by fire into the world they once knew. In the aftermath of ancient catastrophes, a new set of figures emerges across global mythologies. Beings who descended from the sky, arriving either just before disaster struck or in the silent ruins that followed. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki. Mesoamerican legends told of Quetzalcoatl arriving after great destruction. In Polynesian lore, luminous visitors came from the heavens to restore order. Whether portrayed as gods, teachers, or mysterious sky kings, their timing is uncanny. Were these stories simply early attempts to interpret celestial objects, bright comets, strange lights, or planetary alignments as divine messengers? Or were they memories of something far stranger? Surviving members of advanced lost cultures stepping in to guide scattered human remnants? The question remains deliberately unresolved, lingering like a shadow behind every myth. Wherever these sky beings originated, ancient people remembered them not as fantasy, but as presence, returning when the world needed rebuilding most. The Book of Enoch is one of the most unsettling texts ever written, so unsettling, in fact, that it was banned from most biblical canons and buried for nearly 2,000 years. In its pages, Enoch describes visions that defy the boundary between myth and cosmic science. Stars breaking from their courses, heavenly bodies warring across the sky, and angels battling in realms that shake the earth itself. He speaks of mountains melting, oceans rising, and the heavens trembling as if the universe were caught in a violent storm. To ancient readers, these were spiritual warnings. But to modern eyes, Enoch's visions resemble descriptions of astronomical events, meteor storms, celestial impacts, and cosmic disturbances so immense they could alter the planet. Scholars dismiss the text for its strangeness, yet that same strangeness is what makes it remarkable. Why did early religious authorities fear it? Perhaps because Enoch's prophecy sounded less like allegory and more like memory of a chaos humanity once endured. In the Hindu Puranas, time unfolds not as a straight path, but as an immense breathing cycle of creation and destruction. Each age ends in a familiar pattern: fire raining from the heavens, seas rising to swallow the land, and a shroud of darkness settling over the world before life slowly begins again. These are not random calamities. They're rhythmic, predictable, woven into the cosmic order itself. What's striking is how closely these ancient cycles parallel the geological record. Earth, too, moves through epochs marked by firestorms, mass extinctions, rising oceans, and long periods of silence before new life emerges. The sages who recorded the Puranas didn't speak in scientific terms, yet their descriptions mirror the catastrophic resets etched into Earth's crust. It raises an unsettling possibility. Maybe they weren't imagining cosmic destruction. Maybe they were preserving a memory of how many times the world has already ended, and how many times it may end again. The Book of Revelation is often read as pure prophecy, but beneath its thunderous imagery lies something older, an astronomical code woven into sacred language. When Revelation speaks of stars falling to earth, it may be echoing ancient memories of meteor storms. The trumpets that unleash chaos sound remarkably like sequential celestial events: impacts, darkness, poisoned waters, and a sky choked with smoke. Even the apocalyptic red moon and blackened sun resemble the atmospheric effects that follow massive volcanic eruptions or cosmic collisions. Rather than predicting a supernatural end, Revelation may be describing a natural catastrophe through symbolic vision, a language the ancients used to communicate the unimaginable. Its terrifying sequence mirrors known patterns of environmental collapse: fires, famine, poisoned seas, and a trembling earth. If we read it not as metaphor, but as encoded astronomy, Revelation stops being a distant spiritual warning and becomes something far more direct, a memory of a world once broken by the sky itself. Atlantis enters our imagination as a legend, yet Plato described it with the precision of a historian, not as fantasy but as a memory passed down through generations. He spoke of an advanced island civilization gifted with knowledge, engineering, and power far beyond its time. A society that rose to astonishing heights before being swallowed by the sea in a single devastating day and night. For centuries, scholars insisted Plato invented Atlantis as a philosophical metaphor. But the details he provides, its geography, its technology, its sudden destruction, carry the uncanny weight of lived experience. What if Atlantis wasn't a fictional morality tale, but a faint recollection of a real culture destroyed by natural forces we barely understand? The end of the last ice age brought violent floods, shifting coastlines, and cataclysms powerful enough to erase entire civilizations. Atlantis may simply be the most famous name for a story repeated across the world. A brilliant society extinguished, leaving only fragments of memory for future ages to puzzle over. Göbekli Tepe rises from the Anatolian earth like a message left by hands that survived something extraordinary. Built more than 11,000 years ago, far older than Stonehenge or the pyramids, it challenges everything we thought we knew about early civilization. Its intricate stone pillars, carved with animals, symbols, and strange celestial patterns, suggest a culture far more advanced than the hunter-gatherer label archaeologists assign to its era. Yet what makes Göbekli Tepe truly haunting is its timing. It appeared just after a global cataclysm when the Younger Dryas cold period ended and humanity was struggling to rebuild. Some researchers believe its carvings depict the night sky at the moment of a comet impact, a cosmic event that may have shattered the old world and forced survivors to start anew. If so, Göbekli Tepe is not the beginning of civilization, but the first monument of a reset world, built by people who remembered exactly what the sky could do. Scattered across the world are monuments so precise, so mathematically aligned, that they defy the abilities of the cultures to which they're attributed. From the interlocking stones of Pumapunku to the astronomical perfection of Nabta Playa and the megaliths of Sacsayhuaman, these structures feel less like first attempts at engineering and more like the fading echoes of earlier mastery. Their builders seem to understand geometry, acoustics, and celestial alignment with an ease that shouldn't exist in prehistory. The mystery deepens when we consider the timing. Many of these sites appear soon after global upheavals, moments when humanity should have been fighting simply to survive. Instead, we see sudden bursts of architectural brilliance, as if knowledge was being carried forward by survivors of a world that had already fallen. Perhaps these engineers were not inventing but remembering, preserving fragments of wisdom inherited from an age erased by fire, flood, and time. Earth does not move through time gently. It pulses through repeating cycles of upheaval, each marked by dramatic shifts in climate, magnetism, and cosmic interaction. Ice ages come and go with rhythmic precision, freezing continents and then releasing torrents of meltwater powerful enough to reshape the planet. Magnetic reversals flip Earth's polarity, weakening the shield that protects us from solar radiation. Even the sun itself follows long, quiet breaths and sudden bursts, solar minimums and maximums that influence weather, temperature, and atmospheric stability. Layered over these patterns are cycles of cosmic impacts, where the Earth periodically crosses paths with swarms of debris drifting through the solar system. These encounters have triggered extinctions, climate collapses, and rapid environmental change. What's astonishing is how closely these scientific cycles resemble ancient stories, myths of ages ending in ice, fire, darkness, or rain from the heavens. The ancients described these events in symbolic language, while science explains them in data and models. Yet both point to the same unsettling truth. Earth's calm is temporary and its disasters are cyclical, not random. Earth's magnetic field is an unseen shield, a silent guardian that stands between our world and the raw, punishing energy of space. But this shield is weakening, faster than expected. And history shows that magnetic reversals are not rare anomalies but recurring events. When the field collapses during a reversal, even partially, radiation floods the atmosphere, satellites fail, and weather patterns twist into unpredictable extremes. Solar storms that would normally be harmless could ignite power grid failures or strip away sections of the ozone layer. To ancient civilizations, such chaos would have appeared apocalyptic. Their descriptions of darkened skies, scorching winds, and collapsing harvests may echo what happens when Earth's magnetosphere falters. They lacked scientific terms, so they spoke of angry gods, falling stars, and the heavens unleashing judgment. Today we use the language of physics, yet the meaning remains disturbingly similar. When the shield weakens, the world below is left vulnerable. In recent decades, the sky has begun to behave in ways that feel strangely familiar to anyone who has studied ancient warnings. Comet sightings, once rare events that marked entire generations, now appear with growing frequency, streaking across the heavens as if announcing something on the horizon. Solar activity swings between extremes with unexpected flares and deep, eerie, quiet spells that disrupt satellites, communications, and power grids. Even Earth's magnetic environment trembles with unusual disturbances, hinting that something larger is unfolding beyond our sight. To modern science, these are anomalies, points of data in need of explanation. But ancient astronomers viewed the sky as a cosmic clock, and they believed that certain celestial patterns signaled moments of heightened danger. They charted corridors of debris, solar cycles, and star alignments that coincided with past catastrophes. So the question becomes inescapable. Are we entering the same high-risk cosmic zone they once feared, a region of space where history has reset itself before? Across the planet, the signs are impossible to ignore. Seas creep higher each year, swallowing coastlines once thought permanent. Storms grow more violent, tearing through regions unprepared for their fury. Wildfires ignite with a ferocity that turns day into a smoke-choked dusk. Temperatures swing unpredictably, and ecosystems struggle to keep pace with a world changing faster than records can track. These shifts are often blamed solely on modern industry, yet their pattern mirrors descriptions found in some of the oldest texts on Earth. Ancient writings speak of oceans rising without warning, of scorching winds and long seasons of imbalance before a great reset reshaped the world. They described nature's signals as a prelude, a final whisper before collapse. Today we view our melting world through graphs and satellites, but the feeling is strangely similar. The planet is warning us. Whether through myth or measurement, the message echoes the same ancient rhythm. On the edge of mainstream science exists a quiet group of researchers whose theories sound eerily close to ancient prophecy. They're not doomsday preachers or conspiracy theorists, but astronomers, geologists, and physicists who argue that Earth is overdue for a major cyclical event. Some point to geological records showing abrupt climate swings that repeat with uncanny timing. Others study cosmic debris fields the planet periodically moves through, warning that past extinctions may have been triggered by similar encounters. A few focus on solar cycles, noting patterns that align almost perfectly with eras of upheaval described in ancient texts. Their ideas remain controversial, often dismissed because they challenge comfortable assumptions. Yet what makes them compelling is not their speculation. It's the data they uncover, data that overlaps with myths from every corner of the world. When modern instruments and ancient stories begin whispering the same warnings, ignoring those voices becomes far harder than facing them. Ancient civilizations often placed their deepest astronomical and cosmological knowledge in the hands of priesthoods, elite groups trained not only to read the heavens but to interpret the rhythms of creation and destruction. These priests were more than spiritual guides. They were custodians of patterns that determined planting seasons, royal legitimacy, and warnings about celestial upheaval. Their observations were guarded like state secrets, passed through tightly controlled lineages to prevent misuse or panic. In many cultures, even kings relied on these silent observers to understand omens that could alter the fate of entire kingdoms. Today, the guardians of cosmic knowledge look different, but their role feels strangely familiar. Modern observatories, space agencies, and geological institutes monitor the planet with tools unimaginable to ancient eyes. Yet the most concerning data, asteroid trajectories, radiation spikes, magnetic anomalies, is often released quietly or wrapped in technical language that keeps the public calm. Governments run simulations, draft contingency plans, and coordinate with scientific institutions behind closed doors. Just as ancient priests protected what they believed the world was not ready to hear, today's experts may be preparing for possibilities too disruptive to announce openly. Such secrecy reflects humanity's long struggle to manage unsettling ancient cosmic truths. Throughout history, powerful societies have often hidden disturbing knowledge to maintain order. Ancient rulers suppressed astronomical warnings that threatened their authority, fearing that predictions of chaos could spark unrest. In some cultures, priests deliberately softened prophecies or rewrote them entirely, transforming catastrophic cycles into moral lessons rather than literal threats. Even when environmental signs grew impossible to ignore, leaders preferred silence over panic, believing that truth could fracture the stability they worked to preserve. Modern examples follow a similar pattern. Governments have downplayed near-miss asteroid events, withheld climate data, or delayed announcements about emerging geological anomalies to prevent economic or social disruption. Scientific reports are sometimes edited, reframed, or quietly archived when their implications prove too unsettling. This tendency is not born from malice but from fear. Fear that society might unravel if confronted with the full weight of potential catastrophe. History shows that when truth becomes inconvenient, it is withheld. Across the modern world, preparations for unspoken threats quietly unfold in places far from public view. Nations build vast underground shelters, some disguised as research facilities, others hidden beneath remote mountains. Seed vaults store the genetic essence of global agriculture, as if anticipating a moment when the surface world becomes unstable. Scientific institutions run classified simulations modeling scenarios they rarely discuss openly. Solar storms, impact events, sudden climate spirals. These plans mirror ancient survival myths with eerie precision. Long ago, legends told of chosen groups retreating into sacred caves or fortified sanctuaries while the world outside endured fire or flood. They emerged only when the danger passed, carrying the knowledge needed to rebuild. Today's contingency systems feel like a modern echo of that instinct. Preserve what matters, protect a small remnant, and prepare for an uncertain reset. Whether symbolic or strategic, the resemblance suggests humanity still fears the same cosmic forces. To the ancients, time was not an arrow but a wheel, an immense turning mechanism whose gears marked eras of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Civilizations across the world, from India to Mesoamerica to the Near East, agreed on this idea without ever meeting. They believed humanity lived within repeating ages, each destined to end in upheaval before the next began. Their warnings about floods, fires, and darkened skies were not attempts to predict the future. They were memories of what had already happened. This cyclical worldview shaped everything they built and recorded. Temples aligned with solstices, calendars stretched across thousands of years, and myths preserved patterns of catastrophe as faithfully as genealogies. Modern society, with its linear obsession, progress, timelines, forward momentum, often dismisses these models as primitive. Yet the ancients may have understood something we lost, that the past is not gone, only waiting to return. Their stories weren't prophecy. They were history written in cosmic ink, urging future generations to remember the wheel always comes back to the place it began. Hidden within ancient texts is a strange numerical rhythm, a pattern suggesting precise tracking of cosmic cycles. In India's Yuga system, vast spans of time stretching into hundreds of thousands of years are divided into repeating ages, each closing with upheaval. The Maya calculated baktuns and katuns, counting periods that aligned with astronomical shifts and environmental resets. The Sumerians spoke of the Sar cycle, a mysterious interval echoed in multiple clay tablets, hinting at celestial timing rather than mythology. These numbers aren't random. They reflect deep attention to the movements of stars, comets, and planetary alignments. The ancients seem to recognize that cosmic events repeat with astonishing regularity, shaping life on Earth in ways we barely understand. Whether through inherited knowledge or meticulous observation, they encoded these cycles into their calendars and myths. Their math whispers a simple truth. Destruction, like creation, follows a rhythm. Only those who track the pattern know when the next beat falls. Across the world's oldest stories lies a sobering lesson. Civilizations rise, flourish, and eventually collapse. Not by accident, but because they forget the last time the cycle turned. Prosperity breeds complacency. Knowledge fades. Warnings become myths, and myths fade into entertainment. Then, when the sky shifts or the earth trembles, societies are caught unprepared, believing themselves too advanced to fall. This is the law of reset, the idea that humanity is wiped clean not purely by nature's force, but by its own failure to remember. Today we stand at a similar crossroads. Our achievements are vast, yet our memory is short. Ancient wisdom that once served as protection now sits buried under skepticism and distraction. The question is no longer whether the world changes in cycles. It is whether we've learned anything from the civilizations that vanished before us. And as we look toward the uncertain horizon, the answer feels hauntingly fragile. All around us, subtle tremors ripple through the foundations of our world. Scientific signs that something is shifting. Ancient parallels that feel less like coincidence and more like memory awakening. The sky grows turbulent with strange activity. Earth's magnetic field weakens. Weather lashes out in violent extremes. Economies wobble under invisible pressures and societies feel stretched thin, as though one unexpected shock could send everything spiraling. We stand in a moment where modern data and ancient warnings converge, whispering the same unsettling message. Cycles end quietly at first, then all at once. Yet the purpose of recognizing these signs is not to surrender to fear. It is to pay attention, to understand that awareness is humanity's oldest and most powerful survival tool. The ancients left records not to terrify future generations, but to guide them. They wanted us to recognize the patterns, sense the shifts, and stand prepared when the world entered another turning. And right now, it feels as though we are standing at the edge of something vast. If this truly is another turning of the cycle, then humanity faces a choice no different from the civilizations that rose and fell before us. We can ignore the warnings, dismiss ancient texts as superstition, overlook scientific anomalies, and trust blindly in our own permanence. Or we can learn from the past, the way our ancestors hoped we would. Preparing is not an act of paranoia, it is an act of responsibility. Strengthening our systems, protecting our environment, diversifying our resources, these are steps taken not out of fear but out of wisdom. Ignoring ancient knowledge may be the most dangerous mistake of all. Those texts were not written by people hoping to control or frighten. They were written by survivors. Their voices reach across time, urging us not to repeat their downfall. Whether we listen determines the fate of our own age. In the end, perhaps the ancients weren't predicting destruction. They were trying to prevent it. Their stories, carved into stone and woven into myth, may have been instructions disguised as legends, warnings disguised as prophecy. They knew cycles turn, worlds shift, and civilizations forget. But they also believed that memory, true memory, could change destiny. As we stand in a world humming with signs both familiar and new, we face a question without a simple answer. Are we nearing the end of a cycle, or the beginning of a chance to break it? The truth remains suspended between possibility and choice. What the ancients left us is not a countdown, but a compass, one that points toward awareness, resilience, and humility. The echo of their warning has not faded. It waits for us to decide whether we will repeat their story or finally learn from it.